Welcome back to our channel. My name is Napoleon, and today we dive into the stories of 3 serial killers who are also some of the worst cannibals. If you did find the video interesting, please hit the like button. Let us know in the comments what stories you want to hear next, and for more true crime videos, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. This is True Crime Planet. Our first case takes us to the United States, Washington, D.C., in the 1800s. Albert Fish was born in 1870 in Washington, D.C. His father would die when Fish was very young, and his mother, not being able to support him, sent the boy to live in an orphanage for a number of years, where he was horrifically abused in every way you could imagine. This would lay the groundwork for the monster Albert Fish would become. Albert and his mother would later reconnect in 1890 when they moved to New York City, where Albert claims he made money at first as a painter and as a gay prostitute. Although Albert struggled with his sexuality, having many relationships with men throughout the years, he would eventually get married when he was 28 years old, and he had 6 children with his wife. But despite being married, Albert would continue to have male lovers throughout the years. Albert also began struggling with his mental health. Already being a pretty unstable person, Albert became obsessed with death. Albert also began to hear voices and became increasingly more delusional, claiming to be receiving commands from God to commit awful acts. During this time, Fish also became interested in cannibalism. He began by eating raw meat, but this escalated to human flesh. Throughout the early 1900s, Fish began abducting and cannibalizing young boys. Fish preyed primarily on black and disabled children, believing that police would be less likely to investigate the boys' disappearances. And in a truly cold and cruel fashion, Fish would write letters to the families of his victims, describing his awful crimes. These horrific letters would eventually lead to his downfall, though. In 1935, Albert Fish would be tracked down by police more than a decade after his crime spree started. There are 3 known victims, but many believe Fish is responsible for many more. And in 1936, Fish would finally be executed in New York at Sing Sing Prison by electric chair. Our next case takes us to the Soviet Union, where Andrei Chikatilo was known as the Red Ripper and the Butcher of Rostov. Andrei Chikatilo was born on October 16, 1936, in Ukraine. Andrei grew up in a time of great famine and strife during the Soviet era. His childhood was marked by hunger, poverty, and harrowing stories. One such story was a story his mother told him about how his older brother was kidnapped and cannibalized during the famine. This isn't verified, but unfortunately, it was a somewhat common occurrence during the era due to the extreme lack of food. But now knowing what his future held, this may have planted a dark seed inside of Andrei. Chikatilo led a troubled youth, never having too much luck with girls and being constantly mocked for his social awkwardness. This resulted in a deep-seated anger and resentment. His twisted desire for power led him to commit his first known murder in 1978. And with this, Chikatilo began a string of murders that lasted about 12 years. Chikatilo would lure his victims, mostly women and children, into secluded areas under various pretenses, such as a job offer or needing directions. Once secluded, he would attack and brutally murder them, consuming their flesh to assert dominance. Between 1978 and 1990, Chikatilo would murder over 50 people, and his gruesome acts almost always included cannibalism. In his disturbed psyche, consuming the victim's flesh was a way to absorb their life force. In 1990, a detective was observing a train station, which was a hunting ground for a then unknown killer. The detective noticed Chikatilo was wandering around the train station, acting nervous and approaching different young women. He kept a close eye on Chikatilo, and when Chikatilo left, he followed him into a wooded area. Detectives later searched the area where Chikatilo had been, and unfortunately found the body of a young girl. Detectives matched DNA found at the crime scene with DNA they got from Chikatilo, and he was arrested in 1990. His trial would begin in 1992 and was pure chaos from the start. Grieving families of his victims packed into the courtroom in search for justice for their loved ones. Chikatilo even had to be kept in a cage in the courtroom during the trial to prevent retaliation from his victims' families. Because of the sheer amount of victims, the trial would last nearly 2 years, and in 1994, Andrei Chikatilo would be convicted of 53 murders and sentenced to death. He was executed by gun to the head on Valentine's Day, 1994. Our last case will take us to Selesia, which is in modern-day Poland and at the time was part of Germany, where Karl Danke led his reign of terror. Karl Danke was born on August 12, 1860, in the rural setting of Selesia, which is in modern-day Poland. He was raised in a strict religious home, but his father's early death left the family in financial ruin, and Danke's path took a dark turn. He grappled with failed ventures and chronic poverty throughout his life, but eventually, Danke would become a successful businessman. Danke was seen as a pillar of the community and even played the organ at his local church. Danke would purchase a large boarding house with the money he made from his businesses and would often host travelers. This boarding house and these travelers would set the stage for Danke's awful acts. Between 1914 and 1924, Danke murdered and cannibalized at least 30 of his lodgers. He meticulously recorded his horrific acts in a ledger, making note of each victim's age, weight, and even the profits he made from selling their flesh as pickled pork at local markets. Danke's reign of terror would last years, but on December 21st, 1924, Danke was arrested after he attacked a man with an axe. When police searched his home, they discovered human remains and his chilling ledger. 2 days after his arrest, Danke would unalive himself in his jail cell, leaving behind no answers and only questions for why he committed his crimes. If we can take anything from these cases, it's to look out for each other, and especially the most vulnerable among us. Thank you for joining us on these stories today. We're hoping to have more short videos like this and some longer videos as well. And again, if you did find this video interesting, please hit the like button. Let us know in the comments what stories you want to hear next. And for more true crime videos, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. This is True Crime Planet.